Hey everyone, it is the beginning of May, so that means it is time for me to go through the big, the bad, and the ugly of April with my month roundup. Hey everyone, it's Ray. As I've already said, welcome to my little bookish corner of the world and to my April roundup. It's not been a bad month. It started off incredibly strong and then kind of petered out a little bit, but I still am quite happy with the number of books I managed to read. I am not quite sure where to start. I've got a nice couple of piles sitting next to me and I am really looking forward to going through them. So in no particular order, I am going to start with one of the goods, I think, and that is the ABC Murders by Agatha Christie. I love Hercule Poirot, and I'm going to actually encounter another one in a very, very short period of time. But the ABC Murders is, I think, slightly different to some of the other Hercule Poirot books that I have read in the past. This one is, he comes up against, I suppose, his own Moriarty in many ways in the form of ABC. Now, there are several murders, and it took me a while to, I understood the alliteration motivation. I am an alliteration myself, but at the same time, it was kind of, there was a motive hidden underneath everything. I'm not going to go into this in too much detail because I'm actually going to be doing an episode on this. I managed to encourage and persuade a friend of mine to read this book. She's not a huge fan of this type of novel, but I managed to persuade her to read it, and we're going to be talking about it this weekend when she comes down for the bank holiday. But needless to say, I really enjoyed it. Not sure what she thought, though I don't think her feelings were quite as encouraging. And I didn't solve who did it until probably 2/3 of the way through because there weren't enough hints, and I think that's one of the things that Christie is really good at. She will get your juicy creative thought processes going, and then she will sort of deliver the whammy closer to the end. So that was the first, wasn't my first read, but it was a very early May 12 books of Agatha Christie challenge read. So that was a good. I think I gave that 4 stars overall. I've been quite generous with my ratings this month as well. I should preface this with not with all of my reads, but with quite a large number of them. I've given them ratings that probably I wouldn't have done beforehand. I said there was another Agatha Christie, and I wasn't lying. And this was actually April's 12 reads of Agatha Christie, the Agatha Christie read along over on Instagram. This is Murder in Mesopotamia, and this is probably one of my favorite John Suchet Poirot mysteries. The ITV TV show I used to watch with my grandmother on a Sunday evening. But this one takes place on an archaeological dig, and there are many motivations behind it. There is psychological manipulation taking place, and I actually really enjoyed this. So this was yet another 4-star read. As I said, I was being very generous with my read ratings this month, but I did enjoy that, and that's Murder in Mesopotamia. The next book is another cozy crime, cozy mystery, and that is Every Time I Go on Vacation, Someone Dies. Now, this is a proof copy. I absolutely loved how this came. I participated in a really fun pasta cook-along to promote this book with the author Catherine Mack, and this is actually the cover. It came out on Thursday just gone if you're watching this. No, Tuesday just gone, actually, if you are watching this as it's being released, as the video is being released, that is. Oh, wow. Really need to get a script for this at some point. But this was a fun read, Eleanor Dash, the main character, is a mystery author, and she kind of came across the career by accident. She is on a promotional trip on the Amalfi, well, in Italy, on the Amalfi Coast, hence the pasta bake along or cook along. And her ex-boyfriend, Connor Smith, who's the protagonist in her novels, and he's also blackmailing her, so he is very, very unhappy when she says she's going to kill off his character, is actually being targeted by a real killer. Now, she is on holiday promoting well, not on holiday, promoting this book. Her sister, who is her assistant, is with her, as is her ex-partner, her ex-lover, who is another author who is represented by the same publishing house, and Connor, the protagonist of her novels, and a previous lover, and Connor's ex-wife. They're on this trip with a load of fans, and then somebody starts trying to kill Connor and starts trying to kill Eleanor. And the whole book is about trying to figure out A, what the killer's motivation is, and B, who the killer is and why they're targeting them in Italy. I really enjoyed this. It was a fantastically fun read. I do enjoy the slightly comedic, cozy mystery, cozy crime novel. So this really hit me exactly where I wanted it to. It was also a very quick read. I think I read it in an afternoon. So I really got into the story incredibly quickly. And I also have to admit, I really do love the way that this has been presented. I haven't had a book like this before, so it was a really nice surprise to get this one. Another book that I read that has a totally unmatching bookmark in it was One Good Thing by Alexandra Potter. I have enjoyed her past novels. In fact, I've got another one on my shelf to read at this moment in time, which is the sequel to Confessions of a 40-Year-Old F-Up. And the sequel is More Confessions of. This was similar in many ways. It was moving. It really sort of took me out of my life for a moment and made me consider how certain things, I'm quite fortunate. This is about Liv Brooks, who has just been dealt the blow of suddenly finding herself divorced, and in order to sort of escape from it all, she moves away from her home, ends up in Yorkshire, and meets a load of people along the way, as well as gets a dog and finds her life. It's not a romance, it's more a story of growth and development, and I found that was massively refreshing. I read Alexandra Potter for a very long time in my early years, and she wrote things like Me and Mr. Darcy, very much rom-com, and this is the next step on from that. So this was another, I think I gave it 3.75 stars, so 4 stars on Goodreads. The next book didn't fare quite as well as the others, and that was The Bookbinder's Guide to Love by Catherine Gerberer. I'm struggling to think of something nice to say. It was a 2-star read. If I start with that, I was expecting something a lot more than I got. You can see it's quite a short book. It wasn't anything massively taxing. I'd been pulled in by the cover, which made me think, oh, this is going to be a nice, light-hearted, witchy rom-com. And I've read quite a few of those in the last few years. I'm looking at my bookcases, and I think they're all darker covers, so they're on the top shelf, which I can't read even with my glasses on. And I was expecting something like that. So The Demon's Guide to Wooing a Witch, that sort of book. This wasn't anything like that, and I wanted to like the characters. I wanted to find something of merit in the story itself. One thing I will say is at the end of May, so at the end of this month, I'm participating in something called Livestream for the Cure, which is a charity fundraiser, a 72-hour charity fundraiser that podcasters take part in over on Twitch to raise money for cancer research. And the sex scenes in this are probably going to be part of that, because I read bad smut to raise money. I have very, very pale skin and I blush very easily, so kind of part of the goal is to get outside of my comfort zone, and this book is going to definitely feature on that, but it also featured on my this just about earns 2 stars. Sorry. The next book it's an oldie but a kind of goodie, and it's one that I'd never read before, and that is The First Wives Club by Olivia Goldsmith. I actually read this for my book club, which met this month on the 1st of May, so very recently, and I wanted to like it. I really wanted to like it, and there were certain elements of it I did enjoy. I think this was a statement on society, on misogyny, on judging women by their cover, and it did a very good job of that. It really was incredibly well crafted, and I think that my issue going in was I expected the film and I got a much darker storyline. There were certain elements of this. If I don't know if you remember the film, you'll recall Cynthia at the very beginning, the character who sort of starts everything rolling, jumping dramatically, stripping off her beautiful silk peignoir, not her peignoir, but her robe, a beautiful silk robe, standing on a table to climb over and fall off the balcony. You do not get a scene anywhere near as dramatic as that. The unaliving in this book is not as nice, but then a lot of the characters and the punishments that they receive are also far harsher in the book. It's not a case of we're going to blackmail our husbands into giving us money to fund a charity. It is more, we are going to destroy our husbands, their lives, their careers, and ensure that they are in prison. And the husband of Cynthia, Gil, is their main target. I did do an episode on this, and I'll post a link up above so you can find out more about what I thought of it. I gave this 3.5 stars, almost 3.5 stars, I think 3.25, because while I did enjoy it and I think it was a very well crafted book, it also didn't age well. There were certain things in it I couldn't help but take a little bit of an issue with. The next one is Happily Never After by Lynn Painter. This reminds me very much of a Netflix film that I watched where people were hired to break up. I think it was called The Break-Uppers or The Breaker-Uppers or something. It was an Australian film. And this is more the objectors, I suppose. In fact, I think at one point it was called The Objectors. I read a preview for it probably a year ago in the back of another of Painter's novels. And this is what happens when, well, this is basically the story of a woman who hires an objector to stop her wedding because she didn't have, I don't know if it was a case of she didn't have the courage to stop it beforehand, or there was a lot riding on it, and I think she worked with her husband-to-be, and her father worked for her husband-to-be's father. So there were a lot of intricacies in the relationship, so it would make it very difficult. And somebody stands up. This guy is hired to stand up and object at the point, does anybody have any reasons why these two should not be married? And that's how they end up meeting, and they develop a relationship, a friendship, and she becomes an objector as well in her free time. So it's funny, it's quite light-hearted. I enjoy Painter's novels, even her very blatantly YA ones like Better Than the Movies. But at the same time, I think that they are just a light-hearted moment of escapism. So I gave this one 3.75 stars. Next one we have is a book I've had on my shelf for ages. It was part of my 24 for 24, and that is The Garnet Girls by Georgina Moore. I wanted to like this far more than I did. I'm saying that really quietly because so many people recommended this book to me, which is why I purchased it in the first place when it first came out. Everybody was going, oh, this is amazing. I read it as an ARC. I read it on NetGalley. It's fantastic. And there are certain moments in the book that I would agree are fantastic. However, I had issues with the over-dominating mother, the very weak characterization of at least two of the daughters and the relationships they had with their partners, their parents, and essentially this is the story of three sisters who grew up on the Isle of Wight, which is close to where I live, and I did have relatives that lived on the island at one point, and we used to visit when I was a child. So I have very fond memories of the location. And these three daughters are, they have an odd relationship with their mother Margot, who is a very overbearing, domineering character, and who seems to want to have control and make sure her daughters have what she didn't have, namely a stable marriage, because her husband left her when her youngest daughter was not even a year old. And though she tells them, oh, he left and he never looked back, there is a secret sort of hinging that underpins all of this. And it was the secret I had an issue with. Not going to go into it. I don't want to reveal the plot twist or the ending of the book because that's not what I'm about. But at the same time, I did have a few issues with the way that the story and the husband's storyline and everything else was handled, personally. Overall, it was well written. There were moments that were very reminiscent for me of holidays on the beach on the Isle of Wight, and I do live on the coast myself. But yeah, there was just that little thing that didn't quite tip it over the edge. So for me, this was a 3-star read, which I was disappointed about because I was really anticipating it, hence putting it on my 24 for 24. But at least I read one of those this month because I read 2 of those this month actually. The next one is Stone Blind by Natalie Haynes. I did a full review of this book on my video podcast, and that goes into far more of the detail as to why I didn't give this as high a rating as I have given other feminist retellings of Greek mythology. I enjoy Natalie Haynes' work. I love her podcast all about standing up for standing up for the myths and the Greek mythological world in general. She is very well informed, but I just found that there was too much extraneous plot in this book, and it wasn't enough about Medusa and her experiences. Instead, it was focusing far more on all the other characters and the political machinations behind the scenes with the gods on Olympus. So as much as everybody else that I know, again, loved this book and was saying, oh, you've got that book, you've got to read it, and it had been on my shelf for nearly 2 years, yeah, it just didn't quite get there for me, sadly. Now we are getting to, we're getting close to the end. This is book number 11. No, book number 10, because I did read an E-arc as well. Book number 10 was Emily Wilde's Map of the Other Worlds. In fact, oh my good, I actually read 3 of my 24 for 24 this month. This was the sequel to Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, and it continues the story of Emily and her fae admirer, I suppose you could call him. He keeps on proposing and she keeps on telling him no, as she decides to draw a map of the other lands, or the fairy world. And this is classic cozy fantasy. It's another genre a genre within a genre, and it is a comfort book. It was a fantastic Sunday afternoon read. Again, it was very easy to get into, very easy to revisit the world that I hadn't actually that long been absent from, and enjoy Emily's peculiarities. And it sounds weird, but it was reading this one was the first time I realized that we were reading something that was actually historical cozy fantasy, because it's based in the early 1900s. And I don't know why, but it never clicked with me when I read the first book. So I gave this one 4 stars and I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to the next part of the book, the next part of the series. I don't know if that's going to be the final part in the series. There's no clarification on that, but I am looking forward to it because I think it was comforting. Before I get to my 2 5-star reads, and yes, there were 2 5-star reads, I need to talk about the only ebook that I read this month, and that was Lindsay Kelk's Love Story. I have enjoyed Lindsay Kelk's stories. I think the first one I read was On a Night Like This, which I reviewed in, I want to say, the beginning of 2023, and it sent me on a little bit of a journey with, I'm looking on my shelf, The Christmas Wish, Always a Bridesmaid, and several others. And I know that she's got an I Love New York, I Love Everything series. So that is something that I am going to be revisiting at a later date. However, the last couple of books, Love Story and Love Me Do, haven't been it for me. I've enjoyed them enough. They were quick, light-hearted, slightly amusing, but they were also incredibly predictable. I don't know if that's because I've become accustomed to the way that Lindsay Kelk writes, or if it's just a case of I wasn't in the right frame of mind for them and I was reading it because I needed to get it finished. But at the same time, I do still enjoy Lindsay Kelk's writing. I just think that the characters in this particular book just weren't right there for me at that moment. I will probably read it again at a later date and find something entirely different about it, as I often do with books that I've read once and then put down or skimmed through very quickly. Though I didn't skim through this one, I did read it. It was my Monday evening after a very long day at work read, and I liked it. It just wasn't, ticking all the boxes for me at that moment in time. So that was Love Me Do, which comes out, I believe, in July this year. Okay, we are now getting on to 2 5-star reads for April, and I am really, really pleased that I haven't had much luck this year. It's been far more average and okay books than it has been amazingly incredible, hence Good, Bad and Ugly. These 2 are not so much good, bad or ugly. These are the supreme books for April. And the first one is Goodbye Birdie Greenwing by Erica Waller. I know Erica, she is amazing, and I'm not promoting this because I chat with her. It is because this book made me cry a lot. It is the story of Birdie Greenwing, who sadly discovers that she has cancer and she doesn't have long left in this world. I'm going to cry in a minute. She doesn't have long left in this world, and she is completely on her own. Her twin sister and her husband sadly passed away 8 years previously, so she is completely on her own. She never had children, but through no fault of her own, she wanted them. It just never happened. She's in her 70s or 80s, so she is I probably am gonna cry. She is a character. She spends most of her time very, very isolated and away from the world, but then she gets introduced to a brand new neighbor, Jane, with her daughter Frankie. Frankie is autistic and observes the world through very, very black as black and white as white eyes, but that's not a bad thing. And Jane is a nurse who has spent most of her life living with her mother Min in Bath or Bristol, and she decided to move to Brighton in order to gain some independence with her daughter and get a job at Brighton Hospital and carry on with her life. And obviously she's got this relationship with her mum, and then they meet Birdie, and it's just the wonderful development of all these deep, meaningful friendships as Birdie is adjusting to the fact that this is her final farewell. And yeah, I am going to cry. This is her final farewell, and she doesn't feel like she's leaving anything behind. But all the way through, she is making friends with the doctor who diagnosed her, the woman who works in the coffee shop, the cafe at the hospital. And yeah, this book really moved me, as you can tell. I am not going to cry. This book really moved me, and I would love to revisit Birdie Greenwing, and I would encourage you, if you like books that really make you feel deeply, this is a book to read. And yeah, I'm just going to humiliate myself and sob. But that's Goodbye Birdie Greenwing by Erica Waller, and it came out at the sort of midway through April. So that was a 5-star read, if you couldn't tell. And my final book was The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty, or Shannon Chakraborty. I fell in love with Amina al-Sarafi, and it was recommended that I read the Daevabad trilogy. So I managed to get hold of all 3 of them in a HarperCollins sale at the beginning of April, and they'll be in one of the hauls that I'm going to do at some point. But I read this. It took a while, because while I was reading this book, I also picked up about 4 or 5 others and started and finished them. You want to find out more about that, there is a my odd reading habits, odd reading things, odd reading questions video. I'll post the link above. But I talk about how I have to have one book on the go when I'm reading others. So this was my one book on the go for 2 of the weeks in April, and during those 2 weeks I read quite a number of these other books. But this story, once I sat down and really got into it, it pulled me in, and I read 200 pages in a single sitting. Easily read 200 pages in a single sitting. And actually I finished this on April the 30th, the night of April the 30th, and I stayed up until about 1:45 to finish it, because I kept on going, I've got 10 more pages, I've just got to finish this. I needed to find out what happened, and now I really need to find out what happens next. I have got the sequels. In fact, I've got both of them on my bookcase waiting for me to pick them up. But that is it. So that was my 5-star read. So I managed to get through 13 books in April, which was incredible given how slow moving January, February and March all were for me. And I'm hoping that in May I will get a few more read. I know that there are a couple that are very far outside my comfort zone, especially the book that has been picked for our book club, which is meeting in the beginning of June. That's a gothic horror, which is so far outside of what I normally would read. Have you read any of these books? Did you enjoy them? Would you take any of these recommendations? And if so, which ones? I really would love to hear from you. So let me know what you think. What were your reading numbers for April? Did you like them? Did you have a slump month? Did you have an incredible month? Or was it just a normal month and you are happy to be moving into May? Let me know. I would love to hear. Speak to you all soon. Bye.